Welcome back to the Weekly Roundup, the place where we unpack what's been going on in the yoga and wellness world and what we have been coaching our clients through. I am Carol. I'm here with my lovely coaches, Shannon, Bridget, Terry. And before we started recording today, we got on the topic of the end, the end of it all. Being, when do you know it's time to sell your business or exit the business? Because this comes up a lot on our coaching calls, and actually a couple times for me, even just this week with some clients. And so it can be a really, hard decision. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes like Terry knew from the beginning that's what she was going to do. I'm sure you can speak to this, Terry, but yeah, how do you know? And I guess what are the steps to get you there? So I'll just open it up to the team.
Well, I'm going to kick off just because you teed it up so brilliant for me. How do you know you're going to sell your studio? Unless you die, you're probably going to want to sell it and retire at some point. So I always say, what's your exit strategy from the get-go? Even if you're, in your 20s or whatever, it's like I knew from the day I bought my studio that I planned to sell it because I wasn't from Massachusetts. I didn't plan to stay in Massachusetts. So I knew from day one, at some point in the future, I was thinking 10 to 12 years, I was going to sell my studio. So I would say if you haven't even thought about it, it's like, what would your exit strategy be? And because I ran into someone a few months back, I was out on a walk and I forget how it happened. A woman was in front of her yard and I loved their house. I said, "Oh my gosh, your guys is one of my favorite house in the street." Da da da. We got to talking. Turns out she has a OG reformer Pilates studio. And I said something about selling. Oh, and she said, "You could sell your business?" And I went, "Yeah." She said, "I never thought of it," because she's a little younger than I am. She said, "I was wondering when I said, yeah, you can totally sell. You've got this." So the first thing is she was just I blew her mind the fact that she could actually have a business to sell, which is the way a little bit sad, right? It's really kind of sad. So I would say it's like, and then if you have a plan, then you work towards that plan. And it could be selling. It could be getting a manager in place like Bridget, and I know she wants to chime in here in a second, where you're just truly have ascended to that like CEO, actually board of directors kind of position, and you're just taking some money out and you have a team in place that totally runs the business. So those are both options at this point too. Bridget.
Terry, I thought you were going to say what you said before we hopped on, which is from what I understand that you just knew when it was time, right?
I didn't know it. Well,
Yeah.
it was, I do have to tell the full disclosure is it was 2019. It was actually about this time, 2019. I was in a mastermind, which we do offer here in Artha community. And Laura Molcom, who was one of the founders, shout out to Laura, of Walla, was one of the facilitators. And, we were talking about, I was having some issues with staff and things like that. It just was a really challenging year for me because my mom had passed away at the very beginning of the year. So I just had like zero bandwidth to put up with the fucking bullshit. Right. I handled some things not so great because of that. And so everybody's giving me some great advice. And then Laura said, because she knew I was going to sell my studio one day, she said, "Well, Terry, I'm going to come at this from a completely different perspective. I think you should sell." And it was like a light bulb went off in my head. I went,
Mm,
"Oh, yeah." I was just doing it a little bit earlier than I had initially planned. But it was like, as soon as she said it, it was like, yes,
yeah.
this is the next step for me. So
Yeah.
as soon as the idea was floated to me, I knew immediately, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Shannon.
Oh, I'll just say really quickly, I loved hearing you say that just now because as someone who lives whatever it is, like 7,000 miles from my yoga studio, everyone, I always joke, this isn't totally true, but like everyone in my life tells me that I should sell my studio. Like nobody thinks this is a good idea, including me most of the time. It's crazy. It's actually fucking crazy to do this. And I don't want to yet. I don't have the feeling that I'm done. I definitely like feel shades of it more and more. But I guess I'm really proud of myself that I haven't sold yet because like people I extremely respect and usually think like, and to be honest, there's very few people in the world who make me question my own gut feelings. I pretty much trust my own thoughts and feelings about things, but there are a couple, like we all have mentor, advisor type people in our life that will make us question ourselves. And pretty much all of those people for me have been like, "Are you sure that you shouldn't sell?" And I just am like, I know that that is the off ramp. And there is still more that I am achieving and learning and experiencing in what I'm doing right now. And so I'm very excited to hear that someday I will get the feeling that it's time and I'll jump on it when it is.
Yeah, I did the off ramp and then the on ramp. So I built a studio, sold a studio, bought a studio, rebranded, went through COVID, relocated and rebranded again. So I kind of have done all the things in the studio, sort of things that you can do with opening and selling and closing. And um, I too was not from Massachusetts and always wanted to come back home to California. And so selling my studio was how I was going to get back home. Um, and at the same time, buying a new studio and having to start all the way from scratch again, there was a lot of I kind of wanted to sell like right away. I was like, uh-oh, I've made a huge mistake. I've made a huge mistake. This is not a good idea. And like you said, Bridget, I'm just really glad that I stuck with it. And I think it's for me, essentially, it's having coaching. Like Terry really helped me a lot with a lot of the difficulties that I went through. Um, and at some point, of course, I want to sell my studio. Like that's absolutely the plan. And I'm trying to hit a specific target before I do that. And so now I have a motivation to continue doing what I'm doing from that higher CEO level. Like I want to be Bridget when I grow up. I want to live in Europe and run a studio, but I don't think I'm capable of it. But also, that's kind of my vision, right? Is like I want to be at the CEO level and then I want to sell the studio. So you know, finding out who in your employ is interested in doing that is a great way to start. And that's how I sold my first studio. I'm sure that's how I will sell this studio. And my experience was, and what I'd want to impart on somebody else is if you start with that end in mind, like I do want to make this a viable business that's profitable and something that someone else would want to buy, it makes the business better. So, by the time my business partner and I had decided to sell, same thing, Shannon, we wanted to get a certain number. So then it motivated us to say, okay, this is the path to get there to the cell number. All of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, maybe everything's kind of like now we have things like SOPs in place and all these other things that we hadn't done before. And so it just made the business better. So even if you're not right now thinking about selling your business, if you kind of have that plan, like, hey, life happens. Sometimes you're not really ready, but life happens and it kind of forces you into playing that card. So if you do that right now and think, what would make my business look like something someone else would want to buy, and you start down that path, like automatically you're gonna start to see things improve. So that's sort of my advice to people right now, even if you're not thinking that you want to do it now. Think about it with that vision, and then you're going to see how things really improve.
100%. I mean, I think that's for me, um, because I had that in mind from day one, I knew the business had to be profitable. Plus, and everybody comes into a business for different reasons and things like that. It was not a passion project for me. It was like it had to fucking support me. It had to pay me. I had to take money out of it to pay my rent, to pay food. Thank God my car was paid for. Right in the beginning, it wasn't a lot. but I had to pay myself. And I think because of I knew I wanted to sell it, and I wasn't doing anything different than what we coached towards. I had when I did decide to sell it, it sold pretty quickly because everything was in place. Because just like Carol said, and Bridget and Shannon, all of us, I started with that framework. So I had all those things in place when I made the decision to sell. Everything was up to date, everything was documented, and so again, to Carol's point, if you even if you're not at that point, you start thinking about it, it will change your mindset moving forward. And one of the first things, because I did have debt, one of the first things I did was pay off the debt, pay off the fucking debt. That was what I kept my salary low and I just kept funneling money into paying off my debt. And I have to say, I paid it off 14 months early. Right. And thank you. And it was because of, I think, starting from the get-go of this is what's important. Because like a lot of people, I borrowed from my Roth IRA for the down payment. I didn't have that chunk of cash sitting in my savings account, right? So I borrowed from my Roth IRA. So the first priority, pay back the Roth IRA, because that's my retirement. Then once I got that paid back, then it was like, okay, let's double down on the loan and get that paid off. So that then when I did sell the studio, I was 100% debt free. And we hear stories where people sell their studios and yeah, they sell them for large amounts, but they don't walk away with much because they're massively in debt. So that's the other thing I think about when you have that mindset of one day, it's like, okay, I think you start to look at things. I did. And Carol, you just nailed it. You said, yeah, once we made that decision, we started looking at things a little bit differently. And I think that's the big shift, that mindset shift.
Well, I also will say, I've worked with some people that they just can't quite get out from under that debt, and it kind of they stay in that energetic level, and it does feel like such a drain to have that in the back of their mind. And so if selling your business is going to take you out of that and that feels freeing to you, I also would say that is a it's not a negative, you have an asset here that's going to pay off your debt and give you a clean slate. Great. That's amazing. That's fantastic. So it's not a, I don't know, a failure that you're not walking away with a ton of cash or something like that. Like, so I just would want to put that out there as well. There can be
Yeah.
an energetic drain to having that in the back of your mind that I have these loans that I need to pay back. And so get out from under it.
Yeah.
Be free.
Thank you for that call out and clarification, Carol. 100%. I had a client years ago. We just came through coaching. She came to the realization she just didn't want to be a business owner. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I said, it's not a failure. You tried. So many people want to do something, they never do. So at least you tried. You risked something, you took a risk, it's not working out. So how do we get you out of it? In terms of exit strategy, right? And so that actually also can be the point too. And then the other thing, I think all too often, particularly women, we're afraid to ask for help in terms of you are swimming in debt. Maybe there's some debt relief you can get. I mean, there's other avenues that you can go towards if you really want to still keep I know, again, not a financial counselor at all. I'm just saying that if you are listening to this, like, oh, yeah, I fall into that, find a financial person, ask people. There are programs, there are things you can tap into to help maybe consolidate, maybe less interest rates, things of that nature. And also one of the things that I did, because I ended up getting a big bill that I was not anticipating. And because I had a little bit of credit history with the business at that point, I was able to take out an SBA line of credit to pay that off, which is a lower interest rate based upon how the business was doing. So I'm just want to say, don't be afraid to admit that you need help with some of this stuff, whether it's coaching to help the business grow or financial, something to do with financial assistance. There are lots of resources out there for small businesses. Small Business Administration is a great organization. The SCORE, which is the Service Corps of Retired Executives, you can check that one out. Those are people that have, CEO level and CFO that have retired and now are giving back by doing volunteer work with SCORE. So I'm giving lots of pro tips, Bridget, because I know you like pro tips. So there are resources out there for small business owners. Shannon.
I was also headed down the practical tip lane because Bridget. And what are the things that you need to look at when and if you are ready to sell your business? Don't ask me how I know this, but please check your lease for assignment. Is your lease assignable? Step one, just go there first. Obviously, you want to make your business as successful as possible so that you can return on investment for everything that you've done, your blood, sweat, your tears. You want to get all that back and pay off the debts and all these things. But also, number one, just is your lease assignable?
Big time. Double tapping on that for sure. Uh, so I have a question for the group. This came up in a on a call I was on recently. Someone said, "Hey, and actually this has come up several times even this year. This comes up all the time. Hey, someone approached me and wants to buy my business or I have someone in mind. We've talked about it loosely. What do we have to say about that? Like then what? Say you and like of course you can like yes, maybe step one we're going to talk about is like talk to a broker. What if your studio isn't necessarily, I mean definitely do that, but what if you're not making that much? Like what are our options besides brokers? What do we do when our, you know, favorite yogi comes to us and says, "Will you sell me your business?"
Talk to a broker. That I would talk to a broker or talk to a lawyer, get advice, get professional advice. Because even if you don't use a broker to sell, you're still going to need to have an agreement, a purchase agreement. It still needs to be drafted by, and do not use AI for this, use a lawyer, right? You're still going to need advice. And a lot of brokers will give you advice. It's like they will, first off, you got to know how much is the business worth, because my mind was fucking blown when my broker told me how much we can list my business for. It was almost 3 times what I thought it was worth. Right? So that's a big one. You got to know how much your business is worth. And then just get some professional advice on that. And the other thing I just want to think, and because Shannon was talking about an assignable lease. And if you're not familiar with what an assignable lease is, if you're listening on what the hell is an assignable lease, that means that I had an assignable lease, which means if you sell the business, you can assign that lease can be assigned to some, like if I'm selling my business to Bridget, she can assume my lease as is for the existing lease, whatever that lease term is. I can assign it to somebody else. So that is definitely really important, because you don't want your landlord blocking your sale, because we've seen that happen before, and it's not fun.
I
Anybody
just want to
else?
say I call my broker once a year just to chat, just to be like, "What do you think it's worth now? Like, do you think I should do it now?" Like speaking of people
I
whose
love
advice
that.
I
I
take
love that, Bridget.
seriously. Yeah,
That's
I call him about once a year. It's Mitch. I call him about once a year,
you
or
call
I see him
Mitch.
at a Christmas party. And if I don't see him, I'll just call him up and I'll be like, "Still not ready, but if
What
I
do you
was
think?
ready,
Well, and you
hypothetically,
know why you can do that? Because your books are in order.
right.
You know
Yep.
how much, you're making, you know how
Thank
much
you,
your
girl.
expenses are. So that's why he can probably be like, "Oh, send me that P&L. Let's take a look." And I'll
Yeah.
give you an answer right away.
Same here. Once a year, P&L goes to Kristen, and I'm like, what do you think? She's like, you're rocking it.
Yeah. And I use Mitch as well. And when he said, well, I'll need a P&L. I'll never forget. I was on the train going to New York to Mindbody University. I was sitting on the train and we were having this conversation. I went into my Google Drive, and right from the train, I was able to send him the utmost. I logged into QuickBooks, ran the P&L, sent it to him right there within 10 minutes.
Because I'll just say the number of clients that we work with that were like, what's your P&L? Oh, I don't know. My bookkeeper hasn't, I have to ask my bookkeeper. And then the next call is like, well, they're a couple months behind, so I can get you through like the end of last year. Like people. It's mind-blowing to me. That's all I'll say. Because ours was always up to date. And I'm not
And
trying
you
to
should
brag.
have access to your
Need
financials.
access. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
I feel called out on that, but I'm just gonna,
Okay,
that's okay.
well,
That's
it's okay.
okay.
no, you're definitely, Shannon, your books are up to date. They're always up to date, pretty up to
No,
date.
I do have to wait for my bookkeeper a lot of times because they do it quarterly. And so I'm always like, what's going on? Like I go into my software and I want to dig it out, but
Yeah,
I'm
I'll
paying
say
somebody to reconcile.
I'll cop to that too. I guess I probably wouldn't be able to pull it myself. Or like I probably could if I went in there, would know
Well,
exactly which
okay.
buttons to push.
This is a good point.
Definitely
This
would
is a
just
good
call
point.
my bookkeeper.
I could pull a P&L like
Solidarity
that.
goal.
It wasn't necessarily IRS ready. It wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily ready to file my taxes. There might have been things that were uncategorized or whatever, but at least the total, all the monies were there, and you had the basic expense. You know what the expenses were, even if they weren't categorized, and even if it hadn't 100% been reconciled, you can still get an idea. If like most people, if you're having like your deposits going in, particularly with merchant fees going directly deposited to your business account, and then what little cash or checks you're taking, if you regular deposit those, you will know what your total revenue is at a point. You will know what the total expenses are because that's the money going out. You might not know the exact detail of everything, but you should be able to have a good idea of the money coming in, the money going out. Right.
I guess
So,
that's what I'm getting to.
yeah,
Like, there are
yeah,
some people that have really buried their head in the sand,
yeah,
and
have no idea what
it's
that
like
is.
they have no idea how much money is coming in, how much money is going out. They just like barely, they just kind of, yeah, that to me is just very surprising.
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
similar to bearing it with KPIs. People who don't know their KPIs, key performance indicators. If you're not sure what that is, listening land. It's not knowing what your first visit retention is, what your conversion rate is, how many new visits, all that kind of stuff. So it's what we like to say, knowledge isn't power. Knowledge put into action is power. If you don't even have the knowledge, where do you know? How do you know where to move your business? And those are the things that people look at when they're looking to buy your business, by the way, BTW.
Well, and then just another practical tip is like cleaning up your software as well. Like if you have any outstanding balances and things like that, it's just something to be aware of. If you aren't chasing down the people that owe you money, like it's going to look like a liability to somebody that's buying. So you want to be sure you're keeping track of that, and staying on top of it.
Yeah, and the outstanding balance report was a big wake up call for me too. I was like, ooh, monthly recurring revenue is where it's at, period, the end. This we know this from coaching. And no more 50 class cards per Terry ever again. And yeah, I mean, basically, it is a bit of a rude awakening when you're like, oh shoot, there's hundreds of classes that are still outstanding here. So we got to do something about that.
Right, because what they're talking about for, again, listening land is assumed liabilities. So we are, when you're any type of class-based, it's a service-based business, people are paying you in advance. Like if they do a monthly membership, they're paying you for the next month. If they do a 10 class card, they're paying up front for that 10 pack, and then they're slowly using it out over time. So if you sell your studio and you have, I looked at one person, they had $300,000 in assumed liabilities. And some of it was from stuff, and here's a lot of it was because they had, and I always coach this, very rare instances do I disagree with the client, is packages activate on sale date, not on first visit, because the studio had 10 packs going back to 2008 that had been bought and nobody ever showed up to take a class. So they had that money sitting on the books. And then if someone goes to buy it and you run that, they're looking at, holy shit, you mean I have to assume $300,000 in liabilities right out the gate? So clean it up, Carol.
Well, and when we decided to sell, we immediately stopped selling year packs for that reason too. I actually heard of a studio back in the day who did a huge yearly card, pack sale and then like sold the next month. So then that person took over this like huge liability. And I don't think that they were savvy enough
Aware.
to know what they had
Yeah.
gotten themselves into. So
Yeah. 100%.
That
That
actually happened to me when I bought my studio in California. The previous owner had a big sale and then she sold it to somebody else. I ended up buying it from that other person. And what happened, which I don't know, like I don't think this was the right thing to do. She was turning the people away and saying like you can't, that doesn't apply. Even though you paid that money, like she's not the owner anymore. I'm the owner. You have to buy a whole new package. And when I stepped in, I was like, oh no, we're going to contact all of those clients and welcome them back and reach out and say, absolutely, your money is because these people just purchased an annual. They're clearly invested in this business and want to participate and do yoga here. So that was my first step when I took over that business. So that actually did happen to me.
and that shows such tremendous goodwill. I'd be curious to know if any of those people are still with you all these years later.
They are.
Yeah, see that. Yeah, so Shannon had to suck it up, buttercup, for
Yeah.
however many months, but now all these years later, she's more than made that money back.
Yeah, it definitely that is for sure the right move, but the other lady wasn't wrong either. Like if she wasn't paid by that lady for those sales, then she wasn't wrong to, she wasn't, it was not, she was not paid for that. So, but yes, Shannon, I mean, that is for sure. I think when you balance it all out, you gotta do what you gotta
It
do.
was a very tricky situation, and
Yeah, it
and
is.
unfortunately, I have heard of many situations like this.
Oh yeah.
Especially
There's
in our sort of OG Bikram world, I've heard of
mm,
many.
I just heard about an F-45 that closed suddenly in San Diego, like this week, and had just done. Apparently, it's like an insane. You can look this up on the news. Like I guess they posted they had just done this huge annual sale and they closed with no notice and just like locked the doors. And I guess they posted this insane letter being like super mad at everybody. And I guess they also had like I think it was probably a former, like they had a bad business deal go. Like this is in the news. I'm not gossiping. But like they literally, and a business deal gone wrong. The partner had left. And then they said in this crazy letter, that the all of their equipment had been stolen like the night before or something. Insane stuff. But you got to be careful with those annual packs. Like they can be great, but I think the issue is that a lot of people do sell them when they're in trouble because they're like, I need a ton of money fast. And that's when that happens. But anyway, Terry, what is our next topic? What segue am I accidentally doing right now?
Oh, you didn't realize you were doing this
No.
segue. One more thought before we leave this topic is also gift cards. Because in most states, gift cards they're like cash. It's like you have to honor gift cards. So again, and this is where when you're buying a studio, if you're listening to this and you're thinking of buying or buying an existing business, ask for how much money do you have on the books for gift cards, and what are your outstanding liabilities? As the person buying the studio, it is your right. I'm pretty sure I can say you're right to ask for that. All right, the segue I was talking about, you're saying they're saying that the clients are mean or this and that. How do you fire clients? Should you fire clients? When do you fire clients? Because this actually has come up quite frequently in the last couple of weeks for some of my clients. It's like, how much is enough? Where do you like the customer is always right? Where do you draw the line? And if you got to the point, what do you do? And how do you do it? And how should you do it? And So yeah, it's like, what do you do?
Well, I, again, in a general way, have this experience with a couple of clients actually. Most recently, a client is having a little bit of a temper tantrum because some of their favorite classes have been taken off of the schedule. And so instead of coming to the new class that's on the schedule at that scheduled time and doing that class, they are doing the other class in the front row as a protest. Fire or not fire? Red flag or green flag? Give me some flags.
God damn it. I never have my little flag
Flag.
available. It's over
Red
there.
flag.
Yeah, humongous red flag, but I did say before the call, I respect the hell out of it. It's so petty. It's so dramatic. It's so trollish. And you've got to love a move like that. I just think that's so funny. Like I can't, like you have to respect it just a teeny bit because it is. It is just really fucking funny. I can't deny that. And yeah, you gotta pull the reins. There's tons of great reasons to fire clients. I've done it a handful of times in my life. I feel like we did talk about this recently because I know I'm just gonna repeat stories that I did recently talk about. So I don't need to tell my crazy stories, but sometimes people are really opinionated about that you have to do it in person. I have never done it in person. I have done it via email both times oh, no, there was a third time and I did do that in person. I caught him on his way into the studio. Um, But I think it's fine either way. It depends. It really depends on the situation, but don't be afraid to shoot an email. One thing, yeah, the one I caught outside on his way in was a he. Shannon just put, why is it always a he in the chat? But the other two that I can think of off the top of my head were women. And it was very classically gendered though. Like the man was extremely disruptive. He was being really weird, not actually in a sexual way, but like he was just being really weird and disruptive at class. The women were being literally so mean, technically about me, which maybe made me pull that email trigger quickly. But what I was going to say is, oh yeah, sometimes it's fine to do it over email. Oh, this is what I was going to say. And this part I think people miss sometimes. Unless you're dealing with an annual pass, like we talked about before, I am a big believer you refund the entire last payment. So I don't care if I just saw something on a forum. Someone was like, oh, I have to fire this client. And she refunded him for like prorated his last month of membership. So like to the day. And I just think really strongly, I fired a member one time. She'd been a member for a long time. And I think she was near the end of the month and she was about to get charged again. And I just refunded her the entire last month. That is the smartest way to do it. It's the cleanest way to do it. And I think it's the fairest way, honestly, to do it. So those are my thoughts.
I can agree with you, Bridget. I think that I probably did the prorated thing because I'm thinking all the time and effort and energy these people have drained from us, like, fuck you. I'll refund you like this little bit of amount and get the hell out of my business. You know what
No,
I
I
mean?
get it. I
But
respect it,
I,
Carol. I do. I do respect
but
it.
I could be, I'd be a little softer maybe at this point, now that I don't own a business. But I think kind of going back to like knowing when, like you just know, yeah, give them back whatever. If for class pack, Bridget says, give them back whatever is left. Yeah, yeah. So but I think that it goes back to like you just know, and I think that many times, at least we tried to have a dialogue or like, let's talk through this. What is your side of this story? Like, it was never like, oh, this one thing, you're out. Like there's a long road to get to that point sometimes. And even the person that's disruptive at Shannon's studio, I'd probably pull him aside and be like, dude, come on, like you love this, the classes here. You can still practice. Like I would give him an opportunity, but like you can't do that or else it just doesn't work for us, like let's get to an agreement here that we can both because it's just disruptive to your other members too. If anything is like going on like that, it's gonna be ramped up to the top of the list. Like we have to talk to this person if it is disrupting other people's experience in your business. You can't let that continue to happen. So yeah, I've done it through email, I've done it face to face. Maybe we did it more than we should have. But we were very like protective of our clients. And I'll tell you, every time the other clients would come to us and be like, thank you for doing that. Because and it's hard. It's not easy. And it's not something I enjoyed doing by any means, but like you gotta cut out that cancer. Terry, go ahead.
Yes. So two thoughts. One, I forgot the first thought. So the second thought, God, swear to God, senior moments are becoming fast and furious, is having community standards. Actually have community standards that are defined. And it can be part of your liability waiver. It could be a separate thing, a separate document that they sign, that they acknowledge. These are our community standards, is that we will not tolerate. And you can just spell it out specifically. Right. And that by signing this, you agree to our community standards, and that, and so you can actually lay that out so that people know. And I think one of the big ones, I wrote about it, and someone asked a question this in our community a while back. I said, I would have some in community standards that we are not a dating place. We are not a dating app. Please refrain from asking, because like we've seen this happen. And it's either you can have a separate policy for staff not dating, but clients perpetually. I knew one studio that had to exit someone because he was perpetually, I would say, harassing the young female instructors, right? Always hanging around, wanting to go out, and it made them super uncomfortable, right? So they finally exited this dude. But yeah, having community standards, and they can tie to your core values and certain things we will not tolerate. Like I have a client right now that it was an unfortunate circumstance, but it was a whole class. There was like 8 of them. I won't say what modality it was, but those of you probably know what I'm talking about. And they were upset about something, and they literally had the poor young 19-year-old front desk staff person in tears. And the owner was afraid to do anything because, if they cancel their memberships. And I'm like, I get it. However, you can't have your clients harassing somebody over something that was completely out of their control, which was the teacher failed to show up. Forgot. Just, it happens. It's amazing that it doesn't happen as often, but it does happen. And they took it out on, and then what ended up happening is someone says, well, I know how to teach the class. So they had a client get up to teach the class. I know, it was a shit show. Shannon. Not good. No bueno.
It's a no. It's a no for me, dog, as they say. I I was just it triggered a thought in my head of making these like, yes, you can have the policy on your thing and whatever, but where are the eyeballs? The eyeballs are on social media. So a lot of times we will do like a call out, sort of humorous, like, hey guys, don't be dicks. Like, don't act like an asshole at the studio. Like, we had somebody who, we talked about this multiple times, had a spot, blah, 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 had the conversation with the client. You don't have a spot. That's not a thing. We did a thing on Instagram about you don't have a spot. And people were like, I mean, we got so many responses from that. Like, heck yeah. Absolutely. And, so there's ways to deal with it too. I mean, I always trend towards the lighter side, the humor side. That's just part of my personality. So make it funny.
Yeah. Definitely, if you can. Um, I just wanted to say to Terry's point that I just don't have any patience for, and I have compassion for it. I just don't have patience for studio owners, business owners, putting their fear of losing income over their staff's comfort in their workplace. Get the F over it. Figure out a new plan for how you're going to make that revenue back, because your staff, like, you have nothing without your staff, and it is the right thing to do to have them in comfortable environments. This is another thing that came up recently. It was that same person I was talking about who, fired someone and prorated his membership or whatever it was. That's not even the right word for it, but um, something messy had happened. He was making staff uncomfortable, and they ended up the staff ended up emailing him and saying, like, don't come to our classes anymore. And this person was doing all of this out of fear and allowing their teachers to take this on out of the fear of getting sued by this person. I guess they're like a litigious person in the community or something. And I think this comes up a lot when you have the fear of like losing the member or whatever. As someone who loses like several handfuls of members a month, get over it. It'll be fine. Um, but yeah, I think it's so, so, so important to always take your staff seriously. Something my parents taught me as business owners when I was growing up is you always have your staff's back. Unless they've done something truly egregious, you always take the side of your staff. And I take that very seriously in my business. And I think it is the right thing to do, Terry.
It's also how you build loyalty, right? If your staff knows you have their back, that is what creates loyalty. And this is also another opportunity to say, having cameras in your business. This is where having cameras, it can be very, very helpful, because then you have video proof of, because I think a lot of these instances probably take place in the lobby. I'm just guessing a lot of times. But anyway, so having cameras, and then going back to Shannon's, I know Shannon does it at her studio, as incident reports that the staff can file, for want of a better word. So having these things in place too, it's showing to Bridget's point, demonstrating that, yeah, you do have your staff's back, and you're concerned about their safety, and you're taking it seriously, and not burying your head in the sand and hoping that it won't go away. And I've said it before, we said it before, if you're running your business from a position of fear, that is never a good place to be in. It's just hard to run your business from that position, right? And it's like, I do believe what, like Bridget said, if you let someone go, you're going to get it back more. You're going to get it back, because karma works. Karma's a bitch, and karma can also be really great. Just saying. And I know it from both sides. I know it from both sides. Okay, because I have to tell a story. So one time when I broke up with he broke up with me. It was horrible. I was devastated. And then I started thinking about it. And I went, oh yeah, karma's a bitch, because I kind of did to him what he did to me, what I did to this dude years ago. So all right, right. So there is that. Carol.
Well, I was just going to transition. I think it's a good time to transition because we're talking about loyalty of staff. What about, how do you create loyalty from your students that they're not following a teacher per se, but they've fallen in love with the studio itself? That was something we started to talk about before we started recording. And so I don't know, it's interesting because what came up whenever Bridget brought this topic up for me is that way back in the day, we didn't post who was teaching. You just got a teacher. And I think that just inevitably created this, like, the loyalty was to the practice, the people, the whole, the build, like everything that was inside that space and not to one person in particular. So I thought that was, and now obviously we've switched a long time ago, so people can see who's teaching a class, and in class-based businesses, this can be really tricky because you get those rock star teachers that they might fill their classes, but they aren't always the best employees. And so this is where it can be kind of tricky because, if they aren't a great employee and you might want to get rid of them, that you are now coming from a place of fear of letting them go. So I just thought we'd just jump off on that topic.
That's a great one. That's a great one. I remember back the man who unfortunately he passed away, who owned my studio before I bought it. I remember on the phone, like, okay, who's class? He would say, someone called and say, who's teaching? And he'd say, who are you trying to avoid? Just get to class. But he could do that. But to Carol's point, that is a tricky balance. It's like you have that rock star teacher. However, I will two things. I know, okay. One, I had a client that was like rock star teacher, but not exactly what you two examples of this. But when we looked at his numbers, his retention of new clients sucked. The people that went to his class, like a lot of the teachers went to this class. So I said to the owner, I said, it sounds to me like he's really more of a teacher's teacher and a more advanced practitioner's teacher. She goes, oh yeah, you're right. I said, well, he's teaching a beginner yoga class. So why is he doing things that, and so we identified the problem is that his class was way more challenging than most people were able to handle, which is why people weren't coming back. And when she had a conversation with him, he wasn't willing to change. So guess what? She made the decision to let him go. And then the second instance, there's a client of ours who had a rock star teacher, not a good employee, all the things, plus she was infecting a cancer, infecting some of the old, younger or newer teachers, not so much younger, but newer teachers. So, and she taught, they had 2 locations, full-time teacher, taught like 12 classes a week. Nobody thought they would get rid of her. Guess what? They did. And 2 things happened. One, nobody canceled their membership. And 2, the classes were still very well attended. And 2, her little cohort went up to the manager and was like, what can we do so we make sure we don't end up like this person? Right. So, and because they had made it about the community, not just an individual teacher. So I don't know if that answers the question. I do have one more thing that you could do. I'll let anybody else, and then I can jump back in because I don't want to hog. I'm trying. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple practical tips. But one thing I did want to, you know, I think we've done a really good job of sort of laying out some of the issues with this culture of like diva teachers, star teachers. And one of the other issues that comes up is, these people are often really popular because they're teaching something totally different than anyone else in your studio. And that is the problemo right there laid out for you. So that leads to even more of this risk of losing members when they leave because they're like, well, I don't go to anyone else's class because I don't like anyone else's class. And so one of the most important things you can do, and I think we talked about this last week on the roundup, so you can go back and visit that, is making sure your product is dialed in and cohesive across all of your classes so that it isn't okay. Like this doesn't just like come out of nowhere where this teacher is teaching this random thing for, whatever. The only other thing I'll say, and then I'll pass it to someone else, is a really small little practical tip. In our studio, we do not call a class Carol's class or Shannon's class or Terry's class. We call it the 5:30 flow on Friday or whatever. And if I hear that, I correct it. I veer us away from that. I won't let any of my front desk staff say that. And it's just a little cultural thing. I'm also thinking about taking off the names on like our Instagram story every day that we post with like the next day's schedule. I think I'm going to take off people's names on that. And people are definitely going to message and be like, why did you take the names off? Because even when you do all these things, you still get people who have their favorite teachers, whatever. It's unavoidable. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I even this week recently, a teacher was covering for another teacher, and like the people came into class and they're like, "Where's so and so?" And it's like, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna do a class and you're gonna feel amazing afterwards. And so is taking a day off. Or so and so is sick. Like, can we just normalize that yoga teachers are actually human beings and not automatronic robots? Like they need to take time off too. But yeah, I think I've had to deal with cult of personality types in uh the last 15 years. And what I've found is that, just like Bridget said, like really standardizing the experience of the class kind of removes that element. They can still be a rock star teacher of their class, but the class is at your studio and your studio has this class. This is the class that you're offering. And it removes that whole, this person's a rock star, that person's not a rock star. Like, no, like just come and do class, just like Norman said, who are you trying to avoid?
Yeah, you knew it was Norman. Well, a couple of things. First of all, I think we need to define what is rock star. Because every time I hear, I mean, it's like fingers on a chalkboard. It's like if they're a rock star, that means that their classes are full, the retention is good, people are coming, they're contributing to the community, they're helping, they're part of the community. They're actively participating, they're doing the things, whether they have time or not. I'm just saying that they're doing the things they're meant to do. They're on board with everything. And I would say that the differences between those are divas. I don't think we want divas. We want solid team players. I would rather have a team of just solid team players than one or two quote unquote rock stars that don't do, because that also can create that, well, shit, I do all the things, and I know for a fact that Carol's getting more money just because of this, right? And this is where Bridget did a great workshop a while back on performance-based pay, things like this is where you can look at all these things. But the other thing I also thought there, I had a client a couple of years ago, one of her goals for the year that we set at the summit, which there's still space at the summit. If you're interested, we still have space at the summit, is she set a goal for the year that she wanted all her classes, all the modalities to be 70% full on average 70% of the time. That meant even the OG Bikram classes, all the modalities. And that was a team goal. So this is where I think you can have some of these like team goals. It's like, hey, Carol, you're doing a great job getting your classes full. I'd like you to help Bridget. And it's simple as you talk about it. It's like, hey, have you taken she's teaching this class. Great, you should check it out. Or I'm going to go take Bridget's class. Why don't you join me? Right? There are lots of things you can do to build that team unity where you're cross promoting other teachers' classes. Like if I'm an OG Bikram and Carol's teaching hot Pilates, I can say, you should definitely check out Carol's hot Pilates class. It's a great complement to Bikram. Or, hey, you've been taking hot Pilates. We have a great Vinyasa flow class. You should check out Bridget's hot, flow class kind of thing. So I think making some of these like team goals, not just for front desk, but for the teachers as well. And here's the thing, 3 years later, they're pretty much still hitting that 70-70. Even their 5:30 a.m., 90-minute OG Bikram classes get about an average of 65% attendance, even in the summertime. Yeah, so it is possible. Bridget.
That's crazy. I had two thoughts that mostly one thought and one little tiny story. We hired someone recently. He was a newer, younger teacher, and my lead teacher was excited about him. She has a great eye for this kind of thing. I always trust her. And we give our guidelines before they even audition. They audition. We prepare them for their first class with the guidelines. We tell them, these are the expectations, etc. They have a handbook that has the guidelines reiterated inside them. And then this young man taught his first class at Honey Yoga and it didn't follow any of the guidelines. And after class, my lead teacher said to him, "Hey, she actually decided not to. She said, you can't work here anymore." And I know it was great. I was really proud of her. And he was like, "Okay, I'm really confused." And he said, "I guess I just didn't know. Um, I guess I wish I would have known more about the guidelines." So she repeated all the times that the guidelines were shared, all the ways in the emails she said, "You must use the guidelines." What he really meant was, I didn't think you guys were going to hold me to it, you know? And that is because that's what most studios aren't doing. Like most studios don't probably make it. Maybe most studios probably don't even have guidelines. So he was probably really confused from the beginning. But that is the important part is you have the guidelines, sure, but then you actually have to show up to people's class and make sure that they're following the guidelines, which is related to my overall more important point, which is that one of the ways we also avoid this at my studio, and this is in the last few years that we've gotten really good at this. For the first several years of ownership, I was not good at this. We put so much work into our teachers. We put so much mentorship, so much continuing ed for our instructors. We do so much so that we have a staff full of great teachers so that there isn't, I see this a lot in studios where most of the teachers are just medium. And then there's like one or two really solid, really experienced teachers, and then everybody wants to go to those classes. And it's not even that these people are major divas. A lot of times it's just that you don't have a strong staff, and it is hard to hire people who are really strong from the beginning, but it is totally possible to have such a good mentorship program within your studio that you end up with this staff full. There's something I'm so proud of in my business. We have, especially right now, we just have such an amazing staff. The feedback we get all the time is, I like how, I get a little bit of a different flavor with everyone, but every single teacher's class is worth going to on the schedule. They're all so good. And that takes work after you've hired them often because you can't just get a million great teachers.
So Bridget, I'm going to ask you for a coaching teaching moment for you and your lead teacher. So with everything you explained about this dude, and you said, did anywhere in that conversation, did the lead teacher say that this is what you follow? Specifically that this is our guideline, this is how you teach the class. We expect all our teachers to teach this way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure now she's like, I guess I have to be 500% more explicit.
Yeah.
But she's hired so many people
Yeah.
and never had the issue before. So I do think this was just like a little bit of obtuseness. I also think my instinct was that he wasn't prepared for his first class. He over prepared for his audition. And then it wasn't just that he didn't follow guidelines. He actually it was kind of a shitty class to begin with. And I think he just walked in and yeah, it totally ego for sure could have been part of it. He was like, "Oh, they hired me right away. I'm a new teacher." And just ended up just like, "Hey, babe, you still like need to look alive here, So yeah, for sure, she is going to be even more explicit going forward for sure, but it just seems so crazy.
I know it does seem crazy. One thing that I've worked with clients on with class, particularly like a vinyasa flow, but even like an IHP or something like that, is with a new teacher. It's like, give them the class and say, you're going to teach this class for the next 2 months. Right? Give them a couple of, especially with a newer teacher, give them a couple of sequences that are already built out and just say, look, I want you to get really good at teaching these classes over the next however many times, because keeping in mind, thinking about it is, unless that person is teaching 8 classes a week, which doesn't happen very much anymore, if then it's like if they teach that class, they have 2 classes in their tool belt, and they're teaching a couple, and they teach, then it might be a couple of weeks before someone gets that same class. And seriously, if someone's coming all the time, do you really think they're going to remember the class they took from Carol 3 weeks ago? If it's the exact same class, probably not. Right? And especially if they have playlists and things like that, it's like, here's the list. I want you just to get really good at teaching this class, then helping them. So that's one thing that I've coached clients with particularly with newer teachers or teachers that are new to a modality, things of that nature, is give them what you want them to teach and say, I want you to stick to this. Carol, I see you shaking your head.
Well,
So
it's bringing up for me, when you have a class on your schedule that's a low attendance, have you done all these things that Bridget is talking about? Is it the strength of the teacher that's lacking? And have you done your due diligence? Have you taken the class? Have you given feedback? Do they know the expectation? Like sometimes I feel like we're quick to switch to a different mode. It must be the modality, that's just what it is. Well, but have you really trained your teachers up? Because I think that's I love what Bridget's saying is like these people become rock stars or divas because like they have more experience or they whatever, and you haven't done the work to get the rest of your teachers up to par. And this is the other thing that I see a lot of times where it's like, well, I got to be in charge of the trades because I only want certain people filling in for these certain classes. Like, how do you not have a staff full of teachers that you can trust to just step in at any point? Obviously, they need to be with that modality, but I'm just saying, like, a vinyasa teacher should be able to fill a vinyasa a class, right? So, I don't know, just sort of my 2 cents then. And then I was also sort of thinking, like, not only the class itself, but I think we need to be very aware of the entire experience when they walk in the door. Like, is are there teachers that are ignoring clients as they walk in, or they're just they're off in a corner doing something else, or is it the rockstar teacher is a rockstar because they're like greeting everyone, saying hello, welcome in, what's your name, I haven't met you yet. Like these little things before and after class are also part of what make the experience something that a person wants to come back to. And if they're getting that every single time, we kind of talk about a lot of times clients remember the beginning and the end. And so they remember how you made them feel on the way in, or maybe how the class started. They remember how the class ended and how how they're not greeted, but like said goodbye to, like, we see you, basically, is what I'm saying, on the way in and on the way out. And so if that could be just a piece of this as well, so that it's like they come to the studio for the environment and all the people, not just one person.
actually, I would argue that rockstar teacher is over in the corner with their class, their people they have to talk to. You hear that? Oh, I have to talk to my people. It's my class. That's fingers on the chalkboard. Going back to, it's the 5:30 class. It's not Bridget's class.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like, and okay, so here's a pro tip. We like pro tips, is have a challenge. I have a client that's going to do this. Have a challenge with your staff. It's like not just the front desk, but the teachers as well. Every time you're at the studio, you have to introduce yourself to 5 people you don't know. Because I think that's part of it too. We've seen it at studios. Carol, you and I have seen it at on-sites where it's not necessarily out of ill intent. They just like, they don't even realize that they're only talking to the people that they know. Right. So that's just a challenge. Just, hey, introduce yourself to 5 people you've not met. And here's another pro tip. You want teachers to help fill their classes? Have them come take class and do that and invite people to take their class. Oh, hi, I'm Terry. I have a teacher here. Bridget, what's your name? Oh, Bridget, nice to meet you. Hey, I teach Tuesdays at 2 or Tuesdays. I'd love to see you in my class. Right. So those are, but going back to the introducing people, and I know Shannon, you started to do this. Another pro tip, if you're using what we like to call a connections list or an opportunities list with new clients coming in, is one of the things Shannon's studio started to do, which I think is also brilliant, is let's say Carol, this is her second or third visit to the studio, so she's still new, but she hasn't taken Bridget's class yet. So even though it's not like the new in the system, whatever software you're using, it's like, hey, Carol, this is Bridget, or Bridget, this is Carol. This is her about third time in the studio, and this is her first time taking your class. So that now Bridget knows that Carol's fairly new, not new and new to her. Or, hey, Bridget, this is Carol. Remember she took your flow class last week, but she's taking your sculpt class tonight. This is the first time she's taking sculpt. So those are other ways you can make sure that people are seen and heard and feel, wow, talk about a level of customer experience. It's like not just that first visit, but moving beyond. It's like in that first, whatever that trial period is, whatever, whether it's a 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, whatever it is really going to feel like they're right away part of a community. And I'll say it again, I say it almost, and that's just why I do not have a regular yoga practice in Dayton, Ohio. Because even though the studio that's less than 2 miles from me just won best of, I would say bullshit. I went to that studio for a month and nobody said boom to me. The entire month I was there. And I just sort of, normally I'm a pretty like, I just decided to kind of see what it was. And I was like, nothing. Not in the studio when I took class. I didn't get an email, a text, a phone call about the next steps. And yet they were best of. So just saying.
They need a coach. Also, you should have laid a whole lot more 7 on them when you walked in.
I know. For those who don't know what that is, if it's Enneagram personalities, I'm a 7. Oh. On that note,
I think it's a wrap on
I
this.
think it's a wrap.
Once we start talking about Enneagram numbers,
yeah. Well, that is a wrap on this week's Weekly Roundup. Tune in every Friday and make sure you subscribe to the show on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you're listening from. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.